when a romance finally does something for you. Hello fellow book nerds, this is Gabby and welcome to another reading vlog! I had a couple of themes in mind, but actually I just decided to go with the one I'm most excited about, and it is cult books. No, not like cult classic, like books about cults. Did I tell you like a couple videos ago that I love books about cults? And it's not that I love cults, I think they're awful, absolutely atrocious, but I am fascinated by how charismatic leaders can really affect other people and how cults create, how people can follow cults, how anyone can be a part of a cult. I just think it's fascinating, and I'm reading such exciting picks. Oh my god. So basically the book that really inspired this idea was The Project by Courtney Summers. So if you don't know, Courtney Summers is the author of Sadie, and her newest book, The Project, is coming out sometime in February. I can't remember. I actually included in my February releases video, which you can watch if you want. It did terribly. So I talk about it a bit more there, and then I was like, oh man, I'm really excited about this book. Like I really want to read it. Like I like reading about cults. And then I watched Meg's video, Meg with Books. I watched her video about like a reading vlog, and she was just reading like books that other booktubers gave her prompts for, and one of the books she picked out was The Year of the Witching. And The Year of the Witching is a book actually that I gifted her for Christmas, I think, and she said it has cults. I've been dying to read this book for so long, but I couldn't fit it into a video, and apparently it has cults. So we're going to be reading this book. We're also going to pick up Agnes at the End of the World, which is a book I talked about in my like books I want to read before 2021. That didn't happen, but we're going to be reading it right now. All of these have themes of cults, and our main characters find themselves in some type of cult. I am just super excited to see how they all tackle the subject, and I'm so pumped for this one. I think I have not been this, I know I've not been this excited for a vlog in a while. A Year of the Witching, it's been on my radar since I read the title. Not synopsis, not the cover, the title. I was like, the year of the what now? And I fell in love. So I'm super excited for that, and I'll update you once I actually start reading a little bit. Alright, I know you probably don't care, but when I was planning this video, I was literally gonna write these 3 books. What? I was gonna read The Girls, but then I decided to switch for The Year of the Witching because I was more excited. But look at it. Haircut. Summers recommends 10 literary cult classics. Reading that. Nope. Yep. Maybe nope. Agnes at the End of the World. So in this book we follow 2 sisters, Agnes and Beth, who live in this closed off community called Red Creek. Basically live in a cult even if they kind of don't know it. But they've been born there and grown up there, and this cult, this community is like really patriarchal. The women have basically no rights except stay at home and take care of the children. The society is not monogamous, it's polyamorous, and the men are basically allowed to have as many wives as they want, as many as Prophet says they can have, but women have basically no say. And it's about Agnes coming to terms with the fact that this society might not be the best for her, that it might not be very fair, and also the driving force behind that is the fact that her youngest brother has diabetes, and all kinds of medicine are prohibited in this community. Another plot kind of, but it's still following these sisters, but it's about this plague that kind of is happening on the outside world, and the prophet has prophesied basically there will be the rapture and the end of the world, and that they will have to go into a bunker and stuff, and there is some weird disease going on outside of the commune. It's a really interesting exploration of this closed off community, because what's interesting is that Agnes, who's our main character, her sister Beth is also quite a major player, let's call it, but it's definitely about Agnes. What's interesting is that Agnes actually is the one who really believes. She's really like following this belief that the people have fed to her. She's a very religious person, and I think that's interesting because usually we would follow the rebel, who's Beth, who always had these doubts about faith, you know. We follow Agnes, who's at first really religious, so I think that's quite interesting. I think the cult itself, it's a little bit on the nose with its evil, you know, like every chapter starts with like prophet's word. Of example, women are wholly incapable of interpreting God's word. Vanity on the part of a woman is whoredom, an affront to God. A man with many wives is holiest in the eyes of God. Like, they're so misogynistic, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, they're literally like, they're not sugarcoating anything. Nothing's implied. Like, they're so blatantly sexist and evil, so it's kind of ridiculous. I guess it's probably somewhat accurate to how we will follow even the worst scam of the earth. And another like kind of gripe I have of it is that there's a point where Agnes and Beth kind of switch roles, and Agnes becomes the one who doubts and wants to like get out and run away with her family, and Beth becomes the pious one. But it was just so abrupt. So abrupt. Like, Agnes is supposed to be this person who really truly believes in this. This is her religion. This is her way of living. She's literally been brought up, like they were born there. She was brought up thinking this, being indoctrinated and brainwashed. And just like one incident, that's I guess kind of serious, but also just one incident makes her question everything. And she decides everything was a lie within like 2 seconds. And it just felt really unrealistic, because with conditioning that deep, I feel like it would take you a little bit more to like question what you're being told. But she, within 2 chapters, just completely switches her mind. And then Beth, from this like rebellious girl, something happens to her, but it's like, okay, someone throws an egg at her because she's been accused of being a whore, and the egg being thrown has rattled her so much that she becomes the most pious person ever, and like believing in everything and never wanting to sin and whatever. But like, you know, like I understand if it was something a bit more serious, but like overall, I feel like the action's just getting really started. I'm about 142 pages in, so I'm really excited because it's really getting going now. I'll update you later. I'm confused about this, like putting people in bunkers and like dying. Like, why would you do that though? Like, I understand you're a cult leader, so like you have some perks and stuff, but what's a perk of being locked in a bunker? I'm feeling the stress now. Only 152 pages in. So I'm about 300 pages into Agnes, and I'm really enjoying it. It took a bit of pages for me. Well, I've been enjoying it since page 1, but it took a lot of pages for me to be like, oh, I cannot wait to read this. I can't put it down. But about halfway there, it happened. I was like, what? And I just had to keep reading. It's a very different kind of book that I'm used to. I don't know what I would classify it as. I guess a sci-fi, because it's kind of a dystopian. Because on top of the whole cold thing, there's also like this pandemic going on, but this pandemic's like not natural. It's more like magical than anything, but it's not really magic. I don't know, it's just weird because the main character has this connection, and she thinks it's a connection to God, and there was nothing really that leads us to think it's not God. Like, it's not really magic, and like she hears voice. It's way more kind of religious than I thought, but not in a preachy or bad way, just in an interesting way that I'm not used to. I guess I assumed once she like goes away from the cult, it'll be like it for in terms of like her belief in God, and all of that would be shaken, but it wasn't really. And God's still a very big presence, and it is quite religious in that sense. So I don't know, it's a very strange book. I haven't really read anything like this in a long while. I feel like books I've been reading recently have kind of followed similar pattern, kind of are from similar like vibe, they're similar genre, that kind of thing. So it's really refreshing to read something so different, like at least different from what I read. I'm just enjoying the ride, but I really am enjoying the ride. I do want to reiterate that it's not just that it's something I wasn't expecting. It's also really well written, really interesting. I really like both of the sisters actually, and I think they both bring something interesting. Yeah, I'm very, very, very curious where it's gonna go. I have about 117 pages left, so I think I can finish it today. I finished Agnes, and I have such complicated feelings about this book. Where do I even start? I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it. I thought it was engaging, well written. As a book that has words and me being engaged by the words, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I really liked it. But there were some weird things about it that I did not expect. Like, really confused by my feelings. So I read some Goodreads reviews, and it seems a lot of people kind of say the same thing, and that this isn't really like a dystopian novel, although it is because of the whole virus, but it's more of a religious book, and it definitely is a really religious book. And as a not religious person, I didn't dislike that, I didn't mind it, but it did kind of, I had to kind of treat it like, you know, those fantasy books that have like our hero getting awesome power from God knows what and then just like smashing it. It was a really religious book, so I don't know, if you're not into that, I don't know if you should pick it up. If you don't mind that or you like that, then definitely a really good read, really interesting one. I think it had quite a lot of interesting things to say, so it's definitely not quite as what it was advertised as. The cult itself, I wish it was talked about a little bit more. I was really looking forward to like the dissection of the cult. I guess my issue there is the prophet, the leader of the cult, was so uncharismatic and so like Weasley, and we don't even hear from him that much. We barely know anything about him. Although I'm sure that's true sometimes, I think a big part of why people join cults is the charismatic leaders. And even if the leader himself isn't charismatic, I feel like I need something, some kind of explanation or something there to explain to me why people join the cult. So actually this cult, it's been around for like at least like 3 generations, I think, because the current prophet is like a grandson of the first ever prophet who started Red Creek, right? Like from the descriptions of that prophet, he was a Weasley little sleazy. I have no idea why people decided to join him. I guess if there were some other power hungry men who thought, oh yeah, I want to subjugate women, they would join and then maybe force their wives, but it's not talked about or discussed at all. And in this Red Creek place, this cult has 300 people in it, right? So even if less than 300 people joined at the very beginning of the cult, once it's not the first generation, I understand that you were brought up in this cult, you believe in the cult, you're gonna stay in the cult because you're indoctrinated. So I can comprehend that, right? But the first members of the cult, they had to be convinced. They had to leave the normal world we know, like join these religious zealots, and the cult definitely got more extreme as we went. I don't know, I just wish there were a bit more on the cult, a bit more on the indoctrination, a bit more on the brainwashing. Just that was very lacking, and then the religious bits were like turned up to 11. But overall, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, I just felt really like medium of the road about it. I couldn't put it down, so that's always a good sign. I would consider it a success, and I'm really happy I finally read it, and a lot of people seemed really interested in it in the February TBR, and now I feel a bit bad that my thoughts are so disjointed. But I would say if you're really interested in the cult aspect of it, I'd say it's a bit lacking. But if you're a fan of like religious exploration and characters who have very strong faith, then it's quite an interesting read. Even if you yourself aren't religious, I think it's still a pretty interesting story. It was a good read. I was just so confused and I don't know what to feel. Alright, Year of the Witching. So, Year of the Witching, we follow Emmanuel, who lives in this very like religious society, let's call it, kind of away from everyone else, and she has been always marked ever since she was born, basically because her mother ran away from the society and fell pregnant with an outsider, or I call them like outskirts because they're like technically part of their community but not really. So she ran away, she got pregnant, went into the woods, and the woods are kind of believed to be the domain of the Dark Mother. So we have the father, who's like the god basically of this whole cult/society, and then we have Dark Mother, who is kind of the opposite, and she's like the dark female sin. Her domain's like the woods, and many years ago she had like 4 witches, which were her like not daughters but like her minions or whatever, and the witches were burned on the pyre by the first prophet who started this community, let's be generous. And Emmanuel's mother went away to the woods and disappeared for 9 months. Then she came back pregnant, and right after that she passed away. So Emmanuel has been taken in by her mother's family. Whole cult, it's all white, but Emmanuel herself is half black. So she's always stuck out because of that, but she also sticks out because of her mother's history. Like, because of what her mother did, her whole family was stripped away. Like, they used to be, her grandfather used to be one of the apostles. They had all of that stripped away from them, now are very poor. So one day Emmanuel kind of goes into the forest. She gets given this journal, which is her mother's diary, by one of the witches. But this book is actually a horror, and it's adult. It's kind of gross and graphic. Like, for example, when they, you know, do the communion, they don't do like a wafer, but they kill an animal and then they like lick their blood. Like, it's very graphic in that sense, and I'm really loving it. I got about 81 pages in, but I cannot put it down. The atmosphere building is just so wonderful. I love it. Feels so unsettling. It feels like watching like a horror movie, like, for example, oh, there's that one with called where a girl, they think she's like possessed by a devil, a witch or something like that. I've never seen it, but I imagine this is the vibe that it has. The woods are so creepy and the witches are so creepy, and like, I just loved how visceral everything is. So far, my favorite part is the atmosphere, is the creepiness. The author seems to have committed to being like a horror and adult, because it is quite gross so far and really like unsettling. So that's really good. I really like the writing style. I like the main character of Emmanuel. She's only a 16-year-old girl. I guess I understand why they didn't make her older, even though it's an adult novel, because then she'd probably be married by then. Actually, this cult and community is really similar to Agnes at the end of the world. Like, we have a prophet who has like superpowers basically, and other people can have superpowers. They're like gifts from God. There's polygamy, and like the each man can have like multiple wives. So that's interesting to see. The prophet has appeared once or twice, and so far I would say his charisma level is kind of similar to the Agnes's prophets, but hopefully he'll kind of skyrocket, you know, just so I know why everyone's following this weirdo. I really like Emmanuel's family, maybe for a weird reason. So basically, Emmanuel's grandfather had buried her grandma, and then many years later he married another woman who's also given him children. But it's not really weird. Like, this woman Anna isn't like a mean stepmother or whatever. She's really kind of caring, and they're all kind of a family together, and I really like seeing that, because I feel like anytime there's like multiple wives or like, you know, some kind of polygamy that's not like chosen by the people but they get imposed on them, it's always like, oh, you know, the new wife is like super mean or whatever, and they're not a family. But this, you can really tell that they're a family, like, because Emmanuel's mother is dead, so her grandma's basically brought her up. But this Anna woman is also quite like a friend, I would say, like maybe semi-mother figure, semi-friend. I like that Emmanuel really likes her aunt basically, but she says it's her sister's, but it's really her aunt. So I really like seeing that. I actually think that's quite a unique dynamic there that I wasn't expecting. And also, it also has like prophet's words or whatever at the beginning. Very popular with cult books, apparently. This book is so freaking good, and I love Ezra and Emmanuel, and I look like a mess because I just woke up, but I've been reading since 7 a.m. and it's so good. Oh my god, what are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? Ezra. It hurts. Emmanuel and Ezra are just too cute. I'm getting the feels when my tummy feels warm, and it's just like so cute, and I'm just like, when a romance finally does something for you. Holy macaroni, what is even happening? Yes, we finished the Year of the Witching, and has absolutely the most crazy and don't know what to think feelings about it. So, if any of those updates like didn't tip you off, I really loved it. I really loved it. I think it was really well written, really engaging. The creepiness was there. Everything was great. But I do have a little bit more complicated feelings on it because I didn't think it was perfect. And I definitely enjoyed the first half more. Because what I really enjoyed was the creepiness, the uneasiness, the magic of the forest. I just think that all the scenes in the forest were amazing and so creepy and just, you know, I don't know, everything I wanted was were those scenes in the forest, and we never really go back to the forest, and the creepiness kind of gets lost because of that. And I was watching Becca's video from Becca and the Books, and she actually made me realize that it's gonna have a sequel, and I think there lies the issue. I just wanted more from the ending because I wanted it to be super bonkers, just so crazy, weird things, like everything's gone to like completely bananas and just crazy, and I don't know, I just wanted it to do more, and it didn't do more because it still has a sequel, and I don't understand why this needs a sequel. I think it would have worked so perfectly as a standalone. Not to be harsh, maybe it'll be amazing. I'm still gonna read it, like, I'm curious. I just feel like this story could have gone super crazy and not have a sequel and just be an amazing standalone. I went into it thinking that it's a standalone. Yeah, it's still quite satisfying. So you could just read this book and be happy, I think. The Double Novel Coven is the second book's title, so maybe we're gonna have like a whole ass coven. I don't know. I do wish there were more witches because it's called the Year of the Witching. And the witches are there in the beginning, I guess, and they're driving the plot, but it's just not quite as much as I wanted. I love the relationship so much. I love Ezra, I love Emmanuel, and I just love both of them just so much. I think that was so well executed. I was really into it. If you couldn't tell, I love the relationship. So the book overall, I gave it 4.5 stars. I feel like it has a little bit of room to improve because is it room to improve or is it not wanting to do what I want? Because that's two different things, right? I could wish it have gone a different way, but it's not always the right choice for the book and for the author. But I watched Meg's video about it and Becca's, and it seems to be a common thread that people enjoy the first half a bit more. So at least I'm not alone there, but I did enjoy it. I definitely really am happy that I finally read it. I will pick up the sequel and I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen. Maybe my mind will be changed by then. I'll be like, the sequel was the best thing ever, it was necessary, we needed that sequel. So we'll see. Right now I'm not predicting that to be the case. Maybe I'll be surprised. So the project. So I'm now about 20% into the project by Courtney Summers. So basically we follow two sisters, Lo and B. And when the girls were teenagers, their parents got in a really bad accident and passed away. And Lo was actually in the car and she got really badly hurt and she had to be hospitalized and was in a coma. And when she was in a coma, this kind of like cult leader approached her sister, and her sister believes that the reason Lo woke up was because of this cult leader and his religion, and because of that she joined the church and they got estranged. So Lo has not had contact with her sister in many years. It's about her trying to get back to her sister, uncover the ugliness and the crimes she assumed the cult does, because there's not really any proof right now that the cult even is a cult. They just say they're a community project, but the main cult leader, he does believe himself to be ordained and chosen by God and talking with God's word. And I've now read 2 books about cults and I know how that ends. He does seem way more charismatic than the 2 previous ones, who are more of old farts than anything. So I'm curious to see where it goes. So far I'm really enjoying it. I'm listening to the audiobook and I think the audiobook narrators are doing a really good job. Okay, so I am 56% into the project and I'm quite enjoying it. I think it weaves the unease of the cult and what's happening quite well, and it uses the 2 perspectives of the 2 sisters quite well, because one of them we follow in the current timeline and then the other one we follow in the past timeline. So it definitely adds to the unease of like what's happened and where the sister is and all of that. Lo has actually been offered a chance to interview the project members to make like an expose. Very interesting. I really like seeing the dynamics there, and I think this book out of the 3 does the best job, not because the other ones did a shitty job, but because it wasn't the primary purpose. So this one's doing a really good job of showing cults and cult leaders and how they're formed and how they prey on vulnerable people who feel like the direction. The reason why this is so much more effective in this one is because this cult's just starting. So this current prophet or leader, whatever, is the first ever leader, as opposed to the other ones where in the Agnes it was like 3 generations, and I think in the Year of the Witching is at least 3 or maybe more generations, and the cult there was like way bigger anyway, because it was about like, it was like thousands of people, while in Agnes it was like 300 people. And this cult is, there's not an actual number because they don't live in one village together. That's also something else. They're more like community projects, but once you step through to be a certain tier of team member, you basically have to convert. And I think it's really well shown how this prophet has very 2 different faces. So a different face that we can see that he shows to his followers, where he's basically like, I'm God. So that's super creepy. And then to like the public, he's like, I'm not a cult leader, I am spoken to God, but I'm just God's messenger. But it's a very 2 different messages we're getting. So you can definitely tell this guy is shifty as hell. So I like seeing that. I like seeing that he is quite charismatic. He knows how to play the crowds. And like, again, you can see how he picks out the victims and how they're told to go to people who are open-minded, but really it more means like people who look like they're in dire need of direction. And it was making me really uncomfortable with the religious parts of it, because he's really like basically saying, I'm God and you're gonna believe in me, which creepy and definitely a red flag. Alright, I finished the project and I enjoyed it. I did. I think it was well written, an engaging story. I think the ending was super abrupt and came out of nowhere, but okay. It was definitely, like I said before, the most interesting or maybe more in-depth look at a formation of a cult and what might entice someone to join other than being born into it, because like I said, the previous 2 cults, protagonists were born into it, so it's completely different than deciding to join it, I think, out of your own will. So it showed really well how a charismatic leader can really lie and manipulate the truth and make themselves out to be larger than life in order to get people to follow them. So I think that was done pretty well. So I guess if I wanted books on topic of a cult, I succeeded because I got one. I mean, all of them had cults in it, but this one was more like, again, creation and joining of it. I enjoyed the dual perspective. I do think that it gave a certain amount of anxiety to it, but also it made us realize that the charismatic leader of the cult, it's like the main character was seeing him less clearly as the timeline went on, but we saw him more clearly. So on one hand, it took away from that surprise of him actually being a bad guy, surprise by the way, but at the same time it did add to the feeling of foreboding, because we knew the inconsistencies and the lies and we saw that. Overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. There was nothing I disliked about it. I liked it, it just didn't like rock my world. I would say out of the 3 books I've read, The Year of the Witching was my favorite, then it would be Agnes at the End of the World, and then would be The Project. In terms of how well they examine cults, I would say The Project was the best one for that, because it dived into joining a cult. I would still like to read a bit more on this topic, and I'll definitely pick up other books with this. Although in my head I imagine that I love this subject, and I think I do because I find it interesting, but at the same time none of these books, the cult was not the thing that really sucked me in once I started reading. It was the hook, the thing that I bought this because of. But it was like the thing that I was looking forward to the most, like the discussion of the cults, and actually none of them, the cult, were the most interesting thing about them. I mean, maybe The Project, because there was not much outside of the cult. Agnes at the End of the World, that was a weird religious fever dream. But anyway, that's it from this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on cult books. Not on cults. We all agreed cults are a really bad thing. Let me know what you think if you enjoyed them as well. If you read any of these, please let me know what you thought about them. I love hearing your thoughts. I have nothing else to say. Therefore, I'm just going to ask you to please comment, like, and subscribe, as it really, really helps me out. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!